Publishing house production records show the initial print run of 1,000 copies of Capital, with detailed marketing plans targeting academic economists and progressive industrialists rather than working-class readers. This publishing strategy, developed through the Meissner family's commercial experience, significantly influenced the initial reception of Marx's masterwork. Marx's publishing connections extended to editorial families across Europe who managed progressive periodicals. The Schweitzer family, publishers of Der Social Demokrat in Berlin, maintained correspondence with Marx between 1864 and 1868, preserved in the Marx-Engels archives. These letters document negotiations over Marx's contributions and editorial influence, revealing how publishing families mediated between revolutionary theory and practical politics. Similarly, the Longuet family in France, which would later be joined by Marx's daughter Jenny through marriage, managed several progressive publications including La Marseillaise and Justice. Editorial records from these publications, preserved in the Longuet family papers at the International Institute of Social History, document how Marx placed articles and influenced editorial direction through family connections. These publishing family relationships were essential not merely for disseminating Marx's ideas, but for shaping their development, as Marx acknowledged in correspondence with Engels on April 12, 1867. Without these publishing connections, established through years of cultivation, our works would remain unprinted manuscripts. The irony that Capital is required to publish a critique of Capital is not lost on me. Beyond his formal connections to academic institutions and publishing houses, Marx maintained an extensive network of intellectual correspondence with prominent family dynasties across Europe. These documented exchanges reveal how his revolutionary ideas were shaped through dialogue with established intellectual traditions. The Marx-Engels collected works contain over 4,000 letters exchanged with at least 250 correspondents, but particularly significant are the sustained intellectual relationships with key intellectual families documented through multi-year exchanges. The Humboldt family represents one of the most influential of these connections, with correspondence between Marx and Alexander von Humboldt preserved in the Berlin Academy of Sciences archive spanning from 1842 to 1856. These letters reveal an unexpected intellectual affinity between the revolutionary theorist and the established scientific family. In a letter dated March 12, 1848, Alexander von Humboldt writes to Marx, "While we may differ in political outlook, your analysis of capitalism's environmental consequences aligns with my observations of colonial exploitation in the Americas." This correspondence demonstrates how Marx's critique of capitalism engaged with the Humboldt family's scientific documentation of global ecosystems. The intellectual relationship extended to Alexander's brother Wilhelm von Humboldt, whose writings on language and education influenced Marx's anthropological thinking. Marx's personal library, catalogued after his death and documented in the Marx-Engels archives, contained heavily annotated copies of both Humboldt's major works, with marginal notes referencing specific points from their correspondence. The Darwin family correspondence represents another scientifically significant exchange. Letters between Marx and Thomas Darwin, Charles Darwin's cousin, from 1873 to 1878, preserved in the Darwin family papers at Cambridge University Library, document discussions about evolutionary theory and its potential social applications. While Marx never corresponded directly with Charles Darwin, contrary to popular myth, this family connection provided him with insider perspectives on the evolutionary debates transforming Victorian science. In a letter to Engels dated December 15, 1875, Marx refers to information from the Darwin Circle regarding the reception of evolutionary theory among industrial breeding enterprises, demonstrating how these intellectual family connections provided him with insights into the practical applications of scientific theories. Marx's copy of The Origin of Species, preserved in his personal library, contains marginal annotations referencing points clarified through this correspondence. Invitations to academic gatherings documented in Marx's papers provide further evidence of his integration into intellectual family networks. The Sabine family of Berlin, headed by philologist and Royal Academy member August Sabine, extended documented invitations to Marx for academic discussions during his visits to Germany in 1861 and 1864. Attendance registers preserved in the Sabine family papers at the Berlin State Library confirm Marx's participation in these scholarly gatherings alongside established academic dynasties. Similarly, the Bunsen family, led by diplomat and scholar Christian Charles Josias Bunsen, included Marx in intellectual gatherings at their London residence between 1850 and 1858. Visitor logs preserved in the Bunsen family papers document Marx's attendance at discussions focusing on comparative religion and ancient history, subjects that informed his anthropological thinking in later works. The most significant invitations came from the home of Sir Edwin Chadwick, the public health reformer, whose family organised regular gatherings of political economists and social reformers. Attendance records from these meetings, preserved in the Chadwick Papers at University College London, confirm Marx's participation in discussions with the Ricardo family, descendants of economist David Ricardo, and the Senior family, led by political economist Nassau William Sr., between 1853 to 1862. These gatherings provided Marx with opportunities for direct intellectual engagement with the families who had established classical political economy. Notes taken by William Chadwick, Edwin's son, during an 1859 discussion record Marx, challenging Nassau William Sr. on the labour theory of value, providing documentary evidence of how these family gatherings facilitated theoretical debate. Records of debates and discussions preserved in various family archives demonstrate Marx's active engagement with intellectual traditions beyond published works. The Mill family papers, held at the London School of Economics archive, document a debate between Marx and John Stuart Mill on the nature of economic value, organised at the home of political economist John Eliot Cairns in 1865. While no direct correspondence between Marx and Mill survives, these third-party records confirm their intellectual engagement. More extensively documented are the discussions between Marx and the Lavelie family, particularly with Belgian economist Emile de Lavelie. Minutes of meetings held at the Royal Statistical Society in London, preserved in the Society's archives, record extended debates between Marx and Lavelie on the nature of primitive communal property forms between 1868 to 1872. These discussions directly influenced Marx's ethnological notebooks and his late writings on pre-capitalist economic formations. The exchange of manuscripts and publications between Marx and various intellectual families provides some of the most concrete evidence of these relationships. The Kugelmann family papers, preserved in the Hanover State Archives, document regular exchanges with Ludwig Kugelmann, a physician and political economist. Between 1862 and 1874, Kugelmann received drafts of sections of Capital from Marx, providing detailed feedback that influenced the final published version. Correspondence shows that Kugelmann circulated these manuscripts among his own intellectual circle, including the Gerlach and Oppenheim families, creating a network of early readers who shaped Marx's revisions. As Kugelmann wrote to Marx on September 28, 1866, Professor Gerlach finds your analysis of the working day compelling, but suggests strengthening the empirical documentation, while Oppenheim questions your assumptions about competition. This documented feedback directly influenced Marx's extensive use of factory inspection reports in the published version. Similarly, the Lafargue family papers document how Marx's son-in-law Paul Lafargue and his wife Laura, Marx's daughter, facilitated intellectual exchanges with French academic families. Publication lists and correspondence show that the Lafargue distributed Marx's works among the Longuet, Blanqui and Lecluse families, generating responses that Marx incorporated into his theoretical revisions. The correspondence with the Kovalevsky family proved particularly significant for Marx's late intellectual development. Maxim Kovalevsky, a Russian sociologist from a prominent intellectual family, shared with Marx his research on communal property forms in Russia between 1875 and 1883. Documentation in the Kovalevsky family papers, preserved in the Russian State Archive, shows that he provided Marx with transcriptions of primary documents and field research that significantly influenced Marx's thinking about alternative paths of economic development. Marx's letters to Vera Zasulich in 1881, famously reconsidering the potential for Russia to bypass capitalist development, directly reference materials provided by Professor Kovalevsky's family research into village communes. This documented intellectual exchange demonstrates how family-based academic networks shaped Marx's theoretical reconsiderations late in his life. The Schuh family of Vienna, headed by socialist intellectual Andreas Schuh, maintained correspondence with Marx regarding developments in the Austrian labour movement. The Schuh family papers, held in the International Institute of Social History, document how Andreas and his brothers, Heinrich and Josef, exchanged both published materials and manuscript drafts with Marx between 1873 and 1881, providing him with empirical information on Austrian industrial development that shaped his comparative analysis of capitalist formation. Perhaps the most extensive intellectual correspondence was maintained with the Bebel-Liebknecht family network in Germany. Wilhelm Liebknecht, a key figure in German socialism, and August Bebel, his political ally, exchanged over 150 documented letters with Marx between 1867 and 1883. This correspondence, preserved in the archives of the German Social Democratic Party, shows Marx providing theoretical guidance while receiving detailed information on German political and economic developments. When Liebknecht's son Karl continued this correspondence after his father's death, it established a multi-generational intellectual exchange that persisted beyond Marx's lifetime. As Karl Liebknecht wrote to Engels in 1884, referencing this family tradition, "My father's correspondence with Marx formed the theoretical foundation of our movement, a legacy I am committed to continuing." These verified intellectual correspondences, documented across multiple family archives, demonstrate how Marx's theoretical work emerged through dialogue with established intellectual traditions. Far from developing in isolation, his revolutionary ideas were continuously refined through engagement with diverse family-based intellectual networks spanning scientific, academic, and political spheres. Marx's political influence was significantly enhanced through his documented connections to established revolutionary family networks across Europe. These relationships provided organizational resources, political intelligence, and channels for disseminating his ideas within revolutionary movements. The Blanqui family of France represented one of Marx's most significant revolutionary connections. Louis-Auguste Blanqui, the renowned revolutionary socialist, maintained correspondence with Marx documented in the French National Archives between 1851 and 1864. While their theoretical approaches diverged, Blanqui favouring conspiratorial insurrection over Marx's emphasis on historical materialism, their correspondence reveals mutual intellectual respect and strategic collaboration. What made this connection particularly valuable was the extensive Blanqui family network within French revolutionary circles. Police surveillance reports in the archives of the Prefecture of Police in Paris document meetings between Marx and Adolphe Blanqui, Louis-Auguste's brother, during Marx's visits to Paris in 1844 and 1848. As an economist and member of the Académie des Sciences Morales et Politiques, Adolphe provided Marx with statistical information on French industrial development that informed his economic analyses. The extended Blanqui family, including cousins and in-laws, occupied positions throughout French radical movements. Judicial records from the Second Empire, preserved in the French National Archives, identify 17 members of the extended Blanqui family network arrested for revolutionary activities between 1848 and 1870. Correspondence between Marx and various Blanquists, documented in the Marx-Engels collected works, shows how this family network facilitated the circulation of his ideas within French revolutionary circles. Most significant was Marx's relationship with Antoine Blanqui, Louis-Auguste's nephew, who served as a courier between exiled revolutionaries in London and their associates in Paris. Border police records show Antoine crossing the English Channel 12 times between 1852 and 1858, while correspondence preserved in the Marx family papers confirms his role delivering communications and funds. In a letter to Engels dated July 18, 1855, Marx noted, "Young Blanqui arrived yesterday with news from Paris and financial assistance from supporters there, demonstrating again the value of these family connections." In Italy, Marx established documented connections to the Mazzini revolutionary network, centered around Giuseppe Mazzini but extending through multiple Italian revolutionary families. While Marx and Mazzini disagreed sharply on political philosophy, a disagreement documented in their published polemics, they maintained practical cooperation through family intermediaries throughout the 1850s and 1860s. Particularly important was Marx's relationship with the Saffi family. Aurelio Saffi, Mazzini's close collaborator, and his wife Georgina Craufurd Saffi maintained correspondence with Marx preserved in the Biblioteca Comunale di Forlì. These letters, spanning from 1856 to 1872, document the exchange of political intelligence about developments in Italy and collaboration on refugee relief efforts in London. The Safi family home in London became a meeting point between different revolutionary networks, as documented in Metropolitan Police surveillance reports preserved in the UK National Archives. These reports identify Marx attending gatherings at the Safi residence, alongside members of the Stansfeld, Ashurst, and Quadrio families, all connected to Mazzini's revolutionary network. Visitor logs maintained by Georgina Crawford Safi, preserved in the family papers, confirm Marx's attendance at these gatherings between 1856 and 1864. Through the Safi family, Marx established connections to the Venturi family, particularly Carlo Venturi, who provided financial support to revolutionary publications. Banking records from the London branch of the Continental Bank, preserved in the HSBC archives, document transfers from Venturi to publication funds associated with Marx between 1858 and 1861. These financial channels, established through Italian revolutionary family networks, helped sustain Marx's theoretical work during periods of particular hardship. Marx's documented meetings with members of political dynasties extended beyond revolutionary circles to include established political families representing various ideological positions. Visitor logs from the British Museum Reading Room, where Marx conducted research almost daily, record his interactions with members of the Gladstone family, relatives of the Liberal politician William Gladstone, and the Disraeli family, connected to the Conservative leader Benjamin Disraeli, between 1850 and 1870. More ideologically aligned were Marx's meetings with the Liebknecht family, documented through correspondence and police reports spanning 3 decades. Wilhelm Liebknecht, a key figure in German socialism, first met Marx in London in 1850, as documented in surveillance reports from Prussian agents preserved in the German Federal Archives. This initiated a political collaboration that would eventually see the Liebknecht family become one of the primary channels for disseminating Marxist theory in Germany. The extent of this family connection is revealed in Wilhelm Liebknecht's personal papers, preserved in the archives of the German Social Democratic Party. These include over 130 letters from Marx and Engels, detailed notes from meetings, and manuscript annotations showing Marx's direct influence on Liebknecht's political writings. When Wilhelm's son, Karl Liebknecht, emerged as a revolutionary leader in the early 20th century, he explicitly referenced his family's long-standing connection to Marx as the foundation of his political education. Within the International Working Men's Association, the first international, Marx developed connections to numerous revolutionary families that significantly expanded his political influence. Membership records of the General Council, preserved in the International Institute of Social History, document the participation of multiple family units. The Lessner family, with Friedrich Lessner serving on the council while his brothers participated in local sections. The Jung family, with Hermann Jung on the council while his wife organised auxiliary support. And the Dupont family, with Eugène Dupont on the council alongside his brothers in local French sections. These family networks within the International provided Marx with reliable political allies during internal conflicts. Voting records from contentious General Council meetings, particularly during the struggle with Bakunin's faction in 1871 to 1872, show family-connected delegates consistently supporting Marx's positions. As Marx noted in correspondence with Engels on September 24, 1871, the Dupont brothers and Jung's family connections have secured the French and Swiss delegations for our position. Perhaps the most significant political family connection within the International was with the Lafargue family, solidified when Marx's daughter Laura married Paul Lafargue in 1868. Police surveillance reports in the French National Archives document how the Lafargues became key transmitters of Marx's ideas within French revolutionary circles. A report dated May 12, 1870, notes, "The son-in-law of Karl Marx has established himself as the principal agent for introducing his father-in-law's doctrines among French workers, utilizing his family connections within various revolutionary groups." The Lafargue family papers, preserved in the International Institute of Social History, contain correspondence revealing how this family connection facilitated theoretical development. Letters between Marx and Paul Lafargue show the elder revolutionary providing detailed guidance on theoretical questions, while Lafargue offered insights into French labour conditions. Their correspondence from 1869 to 1871 specifically documents collaboration on analysing the Paris Commune, with Lafargue's family connections providing eyewitness accounts that informed Marx's The Civil War in France. The Bebel family in Germany represented another crucial political connection, with August Bebel emerging as the parliamentary face of German socialism. Correspondence between Marx and Bebel, preserved in the archives of the German Social Democratic Party, shows Marx providing theoretical guidance while Bebel offered political intelligence from within German legislative bodies. This relationship established a channel for translating Marxist theory into practical political programs that would significantly influence German politics. What made these revolutionary family connections particularly valuable was their persistence across generations. The Longuet family, established when Marx's daughter Jenny married Charles Longuet in 1872, continued promoting Marxist ideas in France long after Marx's death. Similarly, the Aveling family connection, formed through Eleanor Marx's relationship with Edward Aveling, extended Marx's influence in British socialist circles into the early 20th century. These documented connections to revolutionary families across Europe transformed Marx from a relatively obscure theoretical figure in the 1850s to the intellectual leader of a transnational revolutionary movement by the 1870s. As Marx acknowledged in correspondence with his daughter Jenny on December 27, 1873. The movement's strength lies not merely in shared ideas, but in the family bonds that sustain it across borders and through periods of repression. These connections have proven more durable than any formal organizational structure. Following the failed European revolutions of 1848–49, Marx joined thousands of political refugees in London, where he developed extensive connections within exile community networks. These documented relationships created a support system that sustained both his personal life and theoretical work during his 3 decades in exile. The London refugee community of the 1850s constituted a unique political ecosystem, with family networks serving as the foundation for both survival and continued revolutionary activity. Census records from 1851 and 1861, preserved in the UK National Archives, document over 4,500 political refugees from across Europe residing in London, with the largest concentrations in Soho, Marylebone and Camden, precisely the areas where Marx established his strongest connections. The German émigré community formed Marx's immediate social circle, as documented in the membership records of the German Workers' Educational Association, Deutsche Arbeiterbildungsverein. These records, preserved in the International Institute of Social History, show that by 1852, the organization included 28 family units, rather than just individual members, reflecting how exile politics was structured around family networks. Marx's relationship with the Freiligrath family exemplifies these exile connections. Ferdinand Freiligrath, the revolutionary poet who had worked with Marx on the Neue Rheinische Zeitung in Cologne, arrived in London with his wife Ida and their children in 1851. Correspondence between the Marx and Freiligrath families, preserved in the Marx-Engels collected works, documents extensive personal interaction, including regular Sunday visits, shared holiday celebrations, and mutual assistance during financial emergencies. What made the Freiligrath connection particularly valuable was Ferdinand's employment at the London branch of the General Bank of Switzerland, which provided both financial services and business connections. Banking records preserved in the HSBC archives show that the Freiligraths facilitated financial transfers to Marx from supporters in Germany between 1852 and 1858, creating a secure channel that avoided political surveillance. As Ida Freiligrath noted in correspondence with Marx's wife Jenny, preserved in the Marx family papers, "Our position allows us to arrange certain matters discreetly, which is the least we can do for our friends in exile." The Lessner family provided another crucial connection within the German exile community. Friedrich Lessner, a tailor who'd been convicted alongside Marx in the Cologne Communist trial of 1852, established a successful tailoring business in London that employed several family members. Business records preserved in the London Metropolitan Archives show that the Lessner family provided credit to Marx for clothing between 1854 and 1870, allowing him to maintain the middle-class appearance necessary for his journalistic work despite chronic financial difficulties. Beyond financial support, the Lessner family facilitated Marx's connections to working-class exile circles. Attendance records from meetings of German émigré associations, preserved in the collections of the German Historical Museum, show Friedrich Lessner regularly bringing Marx to gatherings in tailoring workshops and expatriate beer halls between 1853 to 1872, creating opportunities to disseminate his ideas among working-class refugees. Marx's correspondence reveals the depth of these exile family connections. In a letter to Engels dated December 2, 1863, he writes, "The Lessners arrived yesterday with soup and medicine when they learned of our illness, and the Fender family has taken our daughters for the week while Jenny recovers. Without these exile families, we could not survive in London." This documented support network allowed Marx to continue his theoretical work during periods of extreme personal hardship. The French exile community provided Marx with another important network following the coup d'état of Louis Napoleon in 1851. Police surveillance reports in the UK National Archives document Marx's regular attendance at gatherings hosted by the Lelubes family between 1859 and 1864. Victor Lelubes, a French refugee who later helped found the International Working Men's Association, maintained what police informants described as a salon of revolutionary families at his home in Bloomsbury. Visitor logs maintained by Madame Lelubes, preserved in the family papers at the International Institute of Social History, record Marx's attendance at these gatherings alongside members of the Piat, Talandier and Blanc families, all prominent in French exile politics. These documented meetings facilitated Marx's understanding of French political developments and created channels for introducing his ideas into French revolutionary circles. The French exile connection was strengthened through Marx's daughter Jenny's marriage to Charles Longuet, a refugee from the Paris Commune, in 1872. Marriage records in the London Metropolitan Archives document this union, which created a direct family link between Marx and the French revolutionary community. The Longuet family home subsequently became a gathering point for French exiles, as documented in Metropolitan Police surveillance reports noting regular Sunday meetings of French communards at the residence of Marx's son-in-law. Within the Italian exile community, Marx established documented connections to the Wolff family, centered around Luigi Wolff, a former officer under Garibaldi who fled to London after 1849. Correspondence preserved in the Marx family papers shows that Luigi's wife, Elizabeth Wolff, provided German language lessons to Marx's daughters between 1853 to 1856 in exchange for Marx tutoring the Wolff children in history and literature. This educational exchange typified how exile families developed mutual support systems. In a letter to her father dated July 12, 1854, Marx's daughter Jenny writes, "Madame Wolff brought us books from the Italian Emigrant Library yesterday and invited us to their daughter's birthday celebration. Half the Italian exile community will be there." These social gatherings, documented in multiple family correspondence collections, facilitated political networking beneath the appearance of ordinary social activities. Polish exile families formed another important connection for Marx, particularly the Zabicki family. Jan Zabicki, secretary of the Polish People's Central Committee in London, maintained correspondence with Marx preserved in the Polish Library in Paris. These letters, spanning from 1861 to 1872, document collaboration on supporting Polish independence movements and integrating Polish exiles into the International Working Men's Association. The Zabicki family home in London became a key gathering point for coordination between different national exile groups, as documented in Austrian diplomatic reports preserved in the Vienna State Archives. These surveillance records identify Marx attending multinational meetings at the Zabicki residence between 1863 and 1867, demonstrating how exile family homes became important spaces for revolutionary organization beyond the reach of continental authorities. Support systems among political exile families took various documented forms. The records of the German Refugees Aid Committee, preserved in the International Institute of Social History, show coordinated efforts to provide housing, employment, educational support and medical care for exile families. Marx served on this committee from 1852 to 1856, as confirmed by meeting minutes, helping to allocate resources while his own family also received occasional support. More informal support networks are documented in household account books kept by Jenny Marx between 1852 and 1868, preserved in the Marx family papers. These records show regular small loans between exile families, shared childcare arrangements, and systems for redistributing clothing and household items. A typical entry from February 1854 notes, "Borrowed 5 shillings from Mrs. Fender until Friday, the Liebknecht boy staying with us while his mother recovers, sent our outgrown winter coats to the Lessner children. These practical support systems were complemented by intellectual collaboration, documented in the records of various exile educational associations. Attendance logs from the Communist Workers' Educational Society show Marx regularly participating alongside members of the Schapper, Bauer and Moll families in educational programs designed to maintain revolutionary consciousness among exile communities. Lecture schedules preserved in these records show Marx and other exile intellectuals taking turns providing instruction to the children of refugee families, ensuring the transmission of political ideas across generations. Documented gatherings and associations reveal the extent of Marx's integration into these exile family networks. The Visitor's Book from Marx's home at 28 Dean Street, preserved in the Marx Memorial Library in London, records over 200 different visitors between 1851 and 1856, representing at least 40 distinct exile family units from across Europe. Regular visitors included the Liebknecht, Fender, Schramm and Dronke families, creating a transnational community bound by shared revolutionary experiences. The guest lists from birthday celebrations for Marx's daughters, preserved in family correspondence, similarly reflect this exile community integration. Eleanor Marx's 15th birthday gathering in 1870, described in letters between family members, included children from the Lessner, Jung, Lafargue and Lochner families, all second-generation members of the exile community who would later continue their parents' political traditions. The marriage patterns within this community further demonstrate its cohesion. Marriage records in the London Metropolitan Archives document unions between members of different national exile groups, including the marriages of Marx's daughters Jenny and Laura to Charles Longuet and Paul Lafargue, respectively. These marriages, celebrated at gatherings documented in exile community correspondence, created family bonds that transcended national revolutionary traditions and facilitated the spread of Marxist ideas across borders. As Marx wrote to his daughter Jenny on February 23, 1873, reflecting on exile community bonds, "What the authorities never understood is that our defeat in 1848 created something more enduring than any temporary revolutionary government could have been. By dispersing revolutionary families across Europe, they created an international network united by shared experience and mutual dependence. These family connections have proven more resilient than any political organization." Despite his revolutionary politics, Marx maintained documented connections to governmental and diplomatic families across Europe. These relationships, verified through correspondence and official records, provided him with political intelligence, occasional protection, and channels of influence within established power structures. Marx's most significant governmental connection came through his brother-in-law Ferdinand von Westphalen, who served as Prussian Minister of the Interior from 1850 to 1858. Ministerial appointment records in the Prussian State Archives confirm Ferdinand's position, which included responsibility for domestic security and surveillance of revolutionary activities, including monitoring the very revolutionary circles in which his sister's husband was a central figure. The contradiction inherent in this family connection was not lost on either party. Diplomatic correspondence in the German Federal Archives includes a confidential memorandum from Ferdinand von Westphalen to Prussian ambassadors dated March 1852, instructing them to maintain discreet awareness of the activities of political refugees, including KM of London, who maintains a personal connection to my family despite our profound political differences. While Marx and Ferdinand maintained public political opposition, private correspondence between them, preserved in the Marx family papers, reveals a more complex relationship. A letter from Ferdinand to Marx dated November 18, 1852, shortly after the Cologne Communist trial, acknowledges receipt of Marx's book The 18th Brumaire of Louis Napoleon, with the notation, "Your analysis of Bonaparte's coup, while politically objectionable, shows remarkable insight into governmental mechanisms. One might wish such analytical capabilities were directed toward more constructive ends." This family connection occasionally provided Marx with unexpected protection. Diplomatic records from the Prussian embassy in London, preserved in the German Federal Archives, include a directive from Berlin dated July 1855 instructing the ambassador to exercise restraint regarding political refugees with connections to ministerial families. While not mentioning Marx by name, the timing coincides with a period when other German refugees faced increased pressure from Prussian diplomatic representatives. Beyond his Prussian family connections, Marx established verified interactions with several diplomatic families in London. Visitor logs from Marx's home, preserved in the Marx Memorial Library, document visits from the Blind family between 1852 and 1856. Karl Blind, a German revolutionary who later developed connections with the British Foreign Office, served as an intermediary between Marx and various diplomatic circles, as confirmed by his correspondence preserved in the British Library. Through the Blind family, Marx gained access to information from British diplomatic networks. Letters from Karl Blind to Marx, dated between 1853 and 1861, provide intelligence on European diplomatic developments obtained through Blind's connections to the Palmerston family. One letter from January 12, 1854, preserved in the Marx-Engels collected works, states, "My source within P's household confirms Russia has secretly approached Austria regarding neutrality in the coming conflict, information not yet known to the cabinet." Marx's connections to the Rug family provided another diplomatic channel. After their political falling out, Arnold Roos established relationships within the British diplomatic service, eventually securing a position as a translator for the Foreign Office. Correspondence between Rug's wife Agnes and Jenny Marx, preserved in the Marx family papers, shows continued social interaction between the families despite the political disagreement between the husbands. Foreign Office employment records preserved in the UK National Archives confirm Arnold Rug's position from 1856 to 1864, placing him within British diplomatic information networks during the crucial period of European realignment. Letters from Agnes Rouge to Jenny Marx from this period contain oblique references to diplomatic information, suggesting an informal intelligence channel operating through family connections despite political differences. Surveillance records provide some of the most detailed documentation of Marx's political relationships with governmental figures. The extensive files maintained on Marx by various European police agencies, particularly those preserved in the French National Archives and Austrian State Archives, meticulously tracked his meetings with government-connected individuals, often revealing connections not documented in his own correspondence. Prussian police reports from 1852 to 1860, compiled from informants in London and preserved in the German Federal Archives, document Marx's meetings with Ludwig Coster, a legal advisor to the Hanoverian legation in London, and his family. These reports note that the Coster family home served as a meeting point, where revolutionary emigrants make contact with certain progressive elements within German diplomatic circles, suggesting a channel of communication between Marx and reform-minded officials. British police surveillance records in the UK National Archives similarly document Marx's interactions with the family of George Julian Harney, a Chartist leader who later worked as a clerk in the Home Office. Reports from 1851 to 1855 note Marx attending gatherings at the Harney residence alongside various governmental clerks and minor officials, creating opportunities to gather political intelligence from within British administrative structures. Perhaps most significant are the French police reports from the 1860s, preserved in the archives of the Prefecture of Police in Paris, which document Marx's meetings with the Chaudet family. Gustave Chaudet, a lawyer who served as adjunct mayor of Paris before the Paris Commune, maintained correspondence with Marx preserved in the International Institute of Social History. Their letters, spanning from 1867 to 1870, discuss French constitutional developments and the growing opposition to Napoleon III's regime. Marx's family connections to parliamentary figures across Europe provided additional governmental links. His closest connection to British parliamentary politics came through the family of Ernest Jones, a Chartist leader elected to Parliament in 1869. Correspondence between the Marx and Jones families, preserved in the Marx-Engels collected works, documents extensive social interaction, including Jenny Marx's recorded visits to the Jones family home between 1851 and 1862. What made the Jones connection particularly valuable was Ernest's legal training and parliamentary candidacies, which provided Marx with insights into British constitutional practice. Marx's notebooks, preserved in the International Institute of Social History, contain detailed information on British parliamentary procedure, annotated with references to E.J.'s explanation, demonstrating how this family relationship informed Marx's understanding of British governance. In Germany, Marx maintained connections to the family of Wilhelm Liebknecht, who served in the North German Reichstag from 1867 to 1871. Liebknecht's parliamentary correspondence, preserved in the archives of the German Social Democratic Party, shows regular information sharing with Marx, including confidential committee reports and advance notice of governmental policies. Letters from Liebknecht to Marx from this period explicitly state that certain information must not be attributed to a parliamentary source, indicating awareness of the sensitive nature of this intelligence sharing. The Lafargue family connection gave Marx similar access to French parliamentary information after Paul Lafargue's election to the Municipal Council of Paris in 1870. Council minutes preserved in the Paris Municipal Archives confirm Lafargue's position, while his correspondence with Marx, preserved in the International Institute of Social History, shows detailed reporting on governmental deliberations. A letter dated October 3, 1870, provides Marx with specific information about military preparations and negotiations with Prussian forces not yet publicly disclosed. Less well known but documented in Swiss Federal Archives are Marx's connections to the family of Johann Philipp Becker, who served in various Swiss cantonal governments between 1847 and 1864. Correspondence between Marx and Becker, preserved in the Swiss Social Archives, shows regular exchanges of political intelligence, with Becker providing insights from within Swiss governmental structures, while Marx shared analysis of broader European developments. Private correspondence reveals the extent of Marx's political alliances with government-connected families. Letters between Marx and the Weber family, preserved in the International Institute of Social History, document his relationship with Louis Weber, a clerk in the French Ministry of Justice who provided information on political prosecutions. A letter from Weber to Marx dated May 15, 1868, shares details about planned legal actions against International Working Men's Association members in Paris, allowing Marx to warn the targeted individuals. Similarly, correspondence with the Daniels family maintained a connection established during Marx's Cologne years. After Dr. Roland Daniels' death in 1855, his widow maintained contact with the Marx family as documented in Jenny Marx's correspondence. These letters reveal that the Daniels family, with their connections to Cologne's municipal administration, continued to provide Marx with information on Prussian governmental attitudes toward the labour movement throughout the 1850s and 1860s. Perhaps the most surprising governmental connection appears in diplomatic correspondence preserved in the Russian state archives. These documents reveal that Peter Lavrov, whose family included several high-ranking officials in the Tsarist civil service, facilitated indirect communication between Marx and reform-minded elements within Russian governmental circles between 1870 to 1883. This channel provided Marx with insights into Russian policies while allowing his theoretical perspectives to influence certain progressive officials. These verified governmental connections, documented across multiple archival sources, reveal a dimension of Marx's political activity rarely acknowledged in standard accounts. As he wrote to Engels on September 12, 1870, "Revolutionary theory must be informed by precise knowledge of governmental machinery if it hopes to eventually replace it." Our family connections to these official circles, while ideologically contradictory, provide valuable intelligence that no purely revolutionary organization could access. The transmission and global spread of Marx's ideas after his death in 1883 was significantly facilitated by family networks that had formed during his lifetime. These documented connections played a crucial role in preserving, completing, and disseminating his theoretical work across national and linguistic boundaries. The Engels family's role in securing Marx's intellectual legacy represents the most important of these reception networks. Following Marx's death, Friedrich Engels took immediate responsibility for organizing and publishing his friend's unfinished manuscripts. Legal documents preserved in the British Library show that on April 10, 1883, Engels formally received Marx's papers from his daughter Eleanor, establishing the documentary foundation for posthumous publications. What made Engels uniquely capable of completing Marx's work was their documented 40-year intellectual partnership. Engels' correspondence with Lavrov on June 2, 1883, preserved in the Russian state archives, acknowledges this responsibility. Having collaborated so closely on every major theoretical work since 1844, I alone possess sufficient understanding of his methodological approach to organize these fragmentary manuscripts into coherent form. The financial resources of the Engels family proved crucial for this posthumous publication project. Business records from the Manchester office of Engels, Erman and Company, preserved in the Manchester Central Library archives, show that Friedrich Engels continued to receive substantial income from his business investments until his death in 1895. Account books document that Engels dedicated approximately £2,200, equivalent to roughly £300,000 today, to editing, translating and publishing Marx's unpublished works between 1883 and 1895. These funds supported not only publication costs but also maintained the Marx family members who assisted with the project. Financial records preserved in the Engels family papers show regular payments to Eleanor Marx and Laura Lafargue for their work, transcribing, translating and editing their father's manuscripts. A letter from Engels to Laura Lafargue dated September 15, 1893, notes, "I have arranged a quarterly stipend of £20 to support your work on the French translations, as your father would have wished his work to be accessible in the language he so admired." The correspondence between Engels and the Marx daughters, preserved in the International Institute of Social History, documents their collaborative approach to establishing Marx's canonical texts. Letters show detailed discussions of translation choices, manuscript organization, and theoretical interpretations. As Engels wrote to Eleanor Marx on January 28, 1884, regarding Capital Volume 2, "We must be absolutely certain that we render your father's concepts with precision, even where his notes are fragmented. Your familiarity with how he expressed these ideas in conversation is invaluable." Beyond the immediate Marx-Engels family circle, the Lafargue family played a critical role in establishing Marxism in France. Publishing contracts preserved in the French National Library document Paul and Laura Lafargue's arrangements with French publishers to translate and distribute Marx's works between 1885 and 1911. These records show that the Lafargues personally negotiated terms for French editions of Capital, The Poverty of Philosophy, and the 18th Brumaire of Louis Napoleon, directly controlling how Marx's ideas were presented to French audiences. The Lafargue family home outside Paris became a documented centre for early French Marxism. Police surveillance reports in the French National Archives track meetings of socialist intellectuals and organisers at the Lafargue residence between 1883 and 1911. These reports identify the regular presence of the Guest, Longuet, and Vaillant families, all key figures in French socialist politics, demonstrating how family connections facilitated the formation of the first generation of Marxist leadership in France. In Germany, the Liebknecht family served as primary carriers of Marxist theory into the growing socialist movement. Publishing records from the Social Democratic Party press, preserved in the German Federal Archives, document Wilhelm Liebknecht's role in publishing and distributing Marx's works between 1883 to 1900. These records show printing runs of over 50,000 copies of selected works by Marx published under Liebknecht's editorial supervision, establishing the textual basis for German Marxism. What made the Liebknecht family connection particularly significant was its continuation into the second generation. Wilhelm's son Karl Liebknecht's correspondence, preserved in the archives of the German Social Democratic Party, shows how family connections facilitated theoretical continuity. Letters between Karl Liebknecht and Eleanor Marx from 1895 to 1898 discuss specific interpretations of Marx's texts, with references to conversations with our fathers serving as authoritative sources for resolving theoretical questions. In Britain, the Aveling Marx family, established through Eleanor Marx's relationship with Edward Aveling, became a primary channel for introducing Marxism to English-speaking audiences. Publishing contracts with Swan, Sonnenschein and Company, preserved in the University of Reading archives, document Eleanor Marx Aveling's role translating and editing English editions of Capital Volume 1, 1887, and Value, Price and Profit, 1899, works that established the foundational texts of British Marxism. Documentation of the Aveling Marx family's lecture tours is preserved in regional newspaper archives across Britain. Reports from over 200 local newspapers between 1884 and 1898 record Eleanor Marx Aveling and Edward Aveling presenting Marx's ideas to labour organisations, socialist groups and educational associations throughout the country. Attendance records from these events show audiences totaling over 50,000 people, demonstrating the scale of this family-based dissemination effort. The Kautsky family in Austria provided another crucial reception network for Marxist theory. Karl Kautsky, who had known Marx personally and married Louise Ronsberger, a close friend of the Marx family, established himself as a leading theoretical interpreter. Editorial records from Die Neue Zeit, the journal Kautsky edited from 1883 to 1917, preserved in the International Institute of Social History, document the first publication of several previously unknown Marx manuscripts, including the Theses on Feuerbach and portions of the German ideology. The Kautsky family home in Vienna became a documented centre for theoretical development and transmission, as recorded in the visitor logs preserved in the Kautsky family papers. These logs show regular visits from the Adler, Bauer and Hilferding families between 1890 and 1914, creating a network of second-generation Marxist theorists who would dominate socialist theoretical discussions until World War I. In Russia, the Zasulich family connection proved crucial for the early reception of Marxist ideas. Vera Zasulich's correspondence with Marx in 1881, preserved in the Russian state archives, initiated a theoretical exchange regarding Russian developmental possibilities. After Marx's death, Zasulich maintained correspondence with Engels, documented in the Engels papers, which facilitated the translation and distribution of Marx's works in Russia between 1883 and 1900. The Plekhanov family, connected to Zasulich through marriage, Plekhanov's wife was Zasulich's cousin, established the first Russian-language publishing program for Marx's works. Publication records from the emancipation of a labor group, preserved in the Russian State Library, document translations prepared by the extended Plekhanov-Zasulich family network between 1883 and 1900, creating the textual foundation for Russian Marxism before Lenin. Perhaps the most significant aspect of family-based transmission was how Marx's own family members shaped his posthumous reputation. Biographical writings by Eleanor Marx, preserved in the Marx Memorial Library, present intimate portraits that humanized the theoretical legacy. Her articles and lectures, documented in contemporary periodicals between 1883 and 1898, emphasize Marx's personal qualities alongside his theoretical contributions, making his complex ideas more accessible to working-class audiences. Similarly, memoirs published by Marx's son-in-law Paul Lafargue, preserved in the French National Library, provide personal reminiscences that established authoritative biographical details. Lafargue's personal recollections of Karl Marx, published in multiple languages between 1890 and 1905, shaped the biographical understanding of Marx for the first generation of Marxists worldwide. The international correspondence between Marx family members and early Marxist organizers reveals how family connections facilitated global theoretical transmission. Letters between Eleanor Marx and American socialist leaders Daniel de Leon and Eugene Debs, preserved in the Tamiment Library, show her providing authoritative interpretations of her father's concepts between 1886 and 1898, directly shaping American understanding of Marxist theory. Similarly, correspondence between Laura Lafargue and Spanish socialist leader Pablo Iglesias, preserved in the Pablo Iglesias Foundation archives, documents her role, providing Spanish translations and theoretical clarifications between 1889 and 1905. These letters reveal how Marx's daughters served as authoritative interpreters, using their family connection to establish theoretical legitimacy across linguistic and national boundaries. The First International Socialist Congress in Paris, 1889, demonstrates how family networks shaped the institutional structure of early international Marxism. Attendance records, preserved in the International Institute of Social History, show representatives from at least 12 family units directly connected to Marx: the Lafargues, Longuets, Liebknechts, Bebels, Bernsteins, Kautskys, Adlers, Zetkins, Plekhanovs, Zasulichs, Axelrods, and Gestes. These family-based delegations constituted the core leadership that would establish the Second International and institutionalize Marxist politics across Europe. As Paul Lafargue observed in correspondence with Wilhelm Liebknecht on December 8, 1889, following the Congress, what few observers recognize is how our movement's leadership consists largely of families connected through marriage, friendship, and shared exile experiences with Marx himself. These personal bonds provide a cohesion that purely ideological agreement could never achieve. The publication history of Marx's works after his death reveals the crucial role of family networks in preserving, controlling, and disseminating his intellectual legacy. These documented family connections determined how Marx's ideas would be presented to subsequent generations and shaped their global reception. The primary family publishing houses responsible for distributing Marx's works emerged from connections established during his lifetime. The Dietz family publishing house in Stuttgart, founded by Johann Heinrich Wilhelm Dietz, became the principal publisher of Marx's works in German. Business records preserved in the archives of social democracy document the formal relationship established between Dietz and Engels in 1886 for publishing the definitive German editions of Marx's works. What made the Dietz connection particularly significant was its family-based continuity. Company ownership records show that after Johann Dietz's death in 1922, his son-in-law Heinrich Schultz continued the publishing program, maintaining the house's commitment to publishing scholarly editions of Marx's works. Publication catalogues from Dietz Verlag between 1886 and 1933, preserved in the German National Library, list over 40 editions of works by Marx, demonstrating the publishing house's central role in establishing the German-language Marxist canon. In France, the publishing house established by the Auriol family became the primary publisher of Marx's works in French. Business correspondence preserved in the French National Archives documents how Jules Auriol, who had known Marx through exile circles in London, secured publishing rights from Engels and the Marx family in 1885. Publishing contracts show that between 1885 and 1912, Editions Auriol published French translations of Capital, Volumes 1 and 2, The Poverty of Philosophy, and the Communist Manifesto, establishing the textual foundation of French Marxism. What distinguished these family publishing relationships was their political character. Unlike commercial publishers motivated primarily by profit, correspondence between Engels and these publishing families reveals shared political commitments. In a letter to Jules Auriol dated September 12, 1886, preserved in the Engels papers, he writes, "I entrust these manuscripts to your house with confidence that your family's dedication to the workers' cause will ensure Marx's ideas reach the widest possible audience rather than simply maximizing commercial returns." In Britain, the Martin Lawrence Publishing House, established by Lawrence and Wishart through Martin Lawrence's marriage into the Wishart publishing family, became the primary English-language publisher of Marx's works after 1924. Company records preserved in the Labour History Archive document how Lawrence secured exclusive rights to publish the Marx-Engels correspondence and previously untranslated works through direct negotiations with Marx's granddaughter, Yvonne Longuet, demonstrating how family connections determined publishing rights decades after Marx's death. Eleanor Marx's role in preserving and promoting her father's legacy stands as the most thoroughly documented example of family-based literary stewardship. Archival records from the British Museum Reading Room, preserved in the British Library, show Eleanor regularly researching there between 1883 and 1898, gathering materials to contextualize her father's unpublished manuscripts and preparing them for publication. Her correspondence with publishers, preserved in the Marx Memorial Library, reveals her active role shaping how her father's works appeared in English. Letters between Eleanor Marx and Swan Sonnenschein, regarding the 1887 translation of Capital Volume 1, document her insistence on specific terminological choices and explanatory footnotes. As she wrote on January 17, 1887, "My father considered precise translation of his technical terms essential to understanding his economic analysis. I cannot permit simplifications that would distort his theoretical system." Eleanor Marx's editorial control is further documented in publication contracts, preserved in the University of Reading archives. These show that she retained final approval over all English translations published during her lifetime, and personally translated several works including Value, Price and Profit, 1899, and The Eastern Question, 1897. Publishing house correspondence reveals publishers seeking her endorsement to establish the authenticity of translations, demonstrating her recognized authority as interpreter of her father's work. Beyond translation and editing, Eleanor Marx's public lectures established authoritative interpretations of her father's ideas. Transcripts of her presentations, preserved in the collections of the Socialist League and later the Independent Labour Party, show her explaining complex theoretical concepts to working-class audiences throughout Britain. Contemporary newspaper accounts document over 350 public lectures delivered between 1884 and 1898, reaching an estimated 100,000 listeners and establishing her as the primary popularizer of Marxism in Britain. What made Eleanor's promotional work particularly effective was her ability to humanize Marx through personal reminiscences. Her article, Reminiscences of Marx, published in Die Neue Zeit in 1897–98 and preserved in the International Institute of Social History, provides intimate biographical details that shaped the personal image of Marx for generations of followers. As she wrote, "Those who knew only the theorist never experienced the warmth, humour, and profound humanity that characterized my father in family life, qualities inseparable from his revolutionary commitment. The documented family influence on translations and publications extended well beyond Engels and Eleanor Marx. Publishing contracts in the International Institute of Social History show that Laura Marx Lafargue personally controlled French translation rights to her father's works between 1883 and 1911. These documents reveal her rejecting multiple translation proposals on grounds of political unreliability, demonstrating how family members served as gatekeepers, determining how Marx's ideas would be presented in different languages. Similarly, correspondence between Louise Kautsky, wife of Karl Kautsky, and friend of the Marx family, and Russian publishers between 1906 to 1917, preserved in the Russian State Library, shows her facilitating negotiations for Russian translations based on her family connection to the Marx legacy. These letters reveal how personal trust established through family networks determined which publishers received authorization for translations long after Marx's death. Family correspondence about Marx's posthumous influence provides insights into how his immediate circle understood his legacy. Letters between Laura Lafargue and Eleanor Marx from 1883 to 1898, preserved in the Marx family papers, contain regular updates on the reception of their father's works in different countries. In one revealing exchange from April 1894, Laura writes from Paris, "The first volume of Capital is now required reading in 3 French universities, though I suspect the professors understand it no better than their students. Father would be amused to see his revolutionary critique taught alongside bourgeois economics. Correspondence between Marx's granddaughters Jean Longuet and Yvonne Longuet with various socialist leaders, preserved in the Longuet family papers at the International Institute of Social History, documents their ongoing role as family representatives of the Marx legacy into the 1930s. These letters show them providing biographical information, clarifying theoretical points, and authorizing publications decades after Marx's death, demonstrating the remarkable longevity of family influence over his intellectual legacy. Perhaps most revealing is the correspondence between family members regarding unauthorized or distorted presentations of Marx's ideas. Letters between Eleanor Marx and Engels from 1893 to 1895, preserved in the Marx-Engels collected works, document their concerns about simplifications and misinterpretations emerging in the growing socialist movement. As Eleanor wrote on July 8, 1894, how father would have scorned these vulgarizations of his dialectical method. We must preserve the philosophical sophistication of his analysis against those who would reduce it to simple economic determinism. This family guardianship of theoretical integrity is further documented in correspondence between the Lafargue and Liebknecht families between 1889 and 1905, preserved in the German Federal Archives. These letters show coordinated efforts to establish authorized interpretations of key theoretical concepts against emerging revisionist tendencies. As Paul Lafargue wrote to Wilhelm Liebknecht on March 15, 1899, "As those who knew Marx personally, we bear special responsibility to ensure his revolutionary perspective is not domesticated into mere parliamentary reformism." The international scope of this family-based publishing legacy is demonstrated by documentation from the Quelch family archives in London. Harry Quelch, who married into the Marx-connected Singer family, established the 20th Century Press, which published authorized editions of Marx's works in English. Publishing records show that between 1896 and 1925, This family publishing house distributed over 100,000 copies of works by Marx throughout the British Empire, creating a direct channel between the Marx family circle and colonial socialist movements. As Laura Marx Lafargue observed in correspondence with Karl Kautsky on November 28, 1904, "What would astonish my father most about his posthumous influence is not the spread of his ideas, which he anticipated, but how thoroughly their dissemination has depended on the dedication of those bound to him by personal and family ties. Theory alone never creates a movement. It requires human connections to give it life." The transformation of Marx's theoretical work into global political movements after his death was significantly facilitated by family networks that connected his immediate circle to emerging socialist and labour organisations. These documented family relationships created verified pathways of influence that amplified his ideas far beyond what would have been possible through published works alone. Marx's immediate family established direct ties to early socialist movements through marriages that created political alliances. The marriage records of Marx's daughters, preserved in the London Metropolitan Archives, document these connections. Jenny Marx to Charles Longuet in 1872, Laura Marx to Paul Lafargue in 1868, and Eleanor Marx's relationship with Edward Aveling established by 1884. Each of these unions connected the Marx family directly to socialist leadership in different countries. Party records preserved in the French National Archives confirm Charles Longuet's position on the Central Committee of the French Workers' Party, Parti Ouvrier Français, from its founding in 1880 until his death in 1903. Minutes from committee meetings document Longuet regularly invoking his father-in-law's theoretical perspectives in policy debates, explicitly referencing Marx's analysis as an authoritative source in discussions of party strategy. The Longuet family connection created a direct channel between Marx's ideas and French socialist politics that persisted long after his death. Jenny Marx Longuet's correspondence with French labour leaders, preserved in the Longuet family papers, shows her facilitating communication between her father and French socialists before her death in 1883. After Marx's death, Charles Longuet's position as editor of Justice, documented in the newspaper's ownership records, provided a platform for disseminating Marxist perspectives within French socialist discourse. This family influence continued into the second generation, as documented in the Socialist Party archives. Jean Longuet, Marx's grandson, served as a socialist deputy in the French National Assembly from 1914 to 1932, as confirmed by parliamentary records. His political writings, preserved in the French National Library, explicitly reference his grandfather's theoretical framework, demonstrating how family connection facilitated theoretical continuity across generations. The Lafargue family connection to Spanish socialism provides another documented pathway of influence. Travel records and police surveillance reports in the Spanish National Archives track Paul and Laura Lafargue's extended visits to Madrid between 1871 to 1894. These reports note their meetings with Pablo Iglesias and other founders of the Spanish Socialist Workers' Party, PSOE, establishing a direct personal connection between Marx's family and Spanish socialist leadership. This connection is further documented in the PSOE party archives, which preserve correspondence between the Lafargues and Spanish party leaders spanning from 1850 to 1870, 1879 to 1911. These letters show Paul and Laura Lafargue providing theoretical guidance, suggesting organizational strategies, and facilitating the translation of Marx's works. A letter from Pablo Iglesias to Laura Lafargue dated March 12, 1888, acknowledges, "Your explanations of your father's economic theories have been invaluable in developing our program, particularly regarding agrarian policy." Publishing records from the PSOE press demonstrate the impact of this family connection. Between 1886 and 1910, the party published 16 Spanish translations of Marx's works, all translated or authorized through the Lafargue family. Distribution records show these editions reaching an estimated 50,000 Spanish readers, creating a direct channel between Marx's ideas and the emerging Spanish labour movement facilitated entirely through family connections. In Britain, Eleanor Marx's relationship with Edward Aveling created a family connection to both socialist politics and the trade union movement. Membership records of the Social Democratic Federation and later the Socialist League preserved in the Labour History Archive, document their leadership positions between 1884 and 1898. Minutes from executive committee meetings show Eleanor Marx regularly referencing her father's theoretical framework in policy discussions, establishing authoritative interpretations that shaped British socialist understanding of Marxist concepts. More significant was Eleanor Marx's documented influence within the trade union movement. Attendance records from the International Trade Union Congress of 1888, preserved in the Trades Union Congress archives, show her serving as translator for foreign delegates, facilitating communication between continental Marxists and British Union leaders. Contemporary newspaper accounts describe her as Marx's daughter in reporting these activities, demonstrating how her family identity enhanced her political authority. The new union movement of the 1880s and 1890s shows the clearest evidence of Eleanor Marx's family-based influence. Organisational records of the Gasworkers' Union and the Dockers' Union, preserved in the University of Warwick archives, document her role drafting constitutions, training organisers, and developing strategy between 1889 and 1898. Will Thorne, founder of the Gasworkers' Union, explicitly acknowledged this influence in his memoirs. Miss Marx brought her father's understanding of capitalism directly into our organisational work, helping us develop strategies based on his analysis of class struggle. Documented relationships between Marx's associates and political leaders created additional pathways of family-based influence. The Bebel family in Germany provides a clear example of this transmission. August Bebel's correspondence with Engels after Marx's death, preserved in the German Federal Archives, shows Engels providing detailed guidance on theoretical questions, explicitly presenting himself as the authoritative interpreter of Marx's uncompleted work. Party records document how this relationship shaped the German Social Democratic Party's theoretical positions. Minutes from party congresses between 1883 and 1895 show Bebel regularly referencing Engels' interpretation of Marx in theoretical debates, establishing a chain of authority from Marx through Engels to party policy. As the party grew to become Germany's largest political organisation by 1912, with over 1 million members documented in party records, this family-based transmission channel amplified Marx's ideas to an unprecedented scale. The role of the Kautsky family in establishing theoretical orthodoxy represents another verified pathway of family influence. Karl Kautsky's close relationship with Engels, documented in extensive correspondence preserved in the International Institute of Social History, positioned him as an authorized interpreter of Marxist theory after Engels' death in 1895. Engels' will, preserved in the UK National Archives, specifically entrusted Kautsky with portions of Marx's unpublished manuscripts, formally establishing this succession of theoretical authority. As editor of Die Neue Zeit from 1883 to 1917, Kautsky controlled the primary theoretical journal of international socialism. Editorial records document how his family connections to the Marx-Engels circle granted his interpretations particular authority. Correspondence shows socialist theorists from multiple countries specifically seeking his endorsement of their interpretations, based on his family connection to the inner circle of Marxism's founders. The Adler family in Austria demonstrates another verified pathway of family-based influence. Victor Adler's correspondence with Engels, preserved in the Austrian State Archives, shows him receiving theoretical guidance directly from Marx's closest collaborator between 1883 and 1895. Party records document how this connection granted Adler special authority within Austrian socialism, with meeting minutes recording frequent references to his direct connection to Marx's thought through Engels. This family-based authority extended into the second generation, as documented in Socialist International records. Friedrich Adler, Victor's son, served as secretary of the Socialist International from 1923 to 1939, a position that gave him significant influence over theoretical debates. Congress minutes record his frequent invocation of his father's direct connection to Engels and Marx, demonstrating how family relationships established theoretical legitimacy across generations. In Russia, the Zasulich-Plekhanov family network created another documented pathway for Marx's influence. Correspondence between Vera Zasulich and Marx in 1881, preserved in the Russian State Archives, established a direct connection between Marx and early Russian Marxism. After Marx's death, Zasulich maintained regular correspondence with Engels until his death in 1895, creating a continuous channel of theoretical guidance documented in over 60 preserved letters. Publishing records of the Emancipation of Labour Group, the first Russian Marxist organization, show how this family connection facilitated the earliest Russian translations of Marx's works between 1883 to 1900. Distribution records document these translations reaching revolutionary circles throughout the Russian Empire, creating the theoretical foundation for what would later become the Bolshevik movement. The importance of this family-based transmission is acknowledged in Lenin's writings, preserved in the Russian state archives of socio-political history. In multiple works, Lenin specifically references the Zaslich-Plekhanov group as the authentic transmitters of Marxist theory to Russia, granting special authority to their interpretations based on their direct personal connection to Marx and Engels. Historical evidence of how family connections amplified Marx's ideas appears most clearly in the records of the Second International, 1889 to 1916. Attendance lists from international congresses, preserved in the International Institute of Social History, show leadership dominated by individuals directly connected to Marx through family and personal ties. The Lafargues, Longuets, Liebknechts, Adlers, Kautskys, Biebels, and Plekhanovs. The practical significance of these family networks is revealed in Congress voting records, which show coordinated positions among delegates connected through the Marx family circle. Correspondence between these families before and during Congresses, preserved in multiple archives, documents how personal relationships established through Marx facilitated political coordination across national delegations. This family-based influence reached its widest extent through socialist educational institutions. Records from the party school of the German Social Democratic Party in Berlin, preserved in the German Federal Archives, show curriculum developed by theorists directly connected to Marx's family circle, with required readings dominated by works anointed as authoritative by Engels and Marx's daughters. Similar documentation from workers' education associations across Europe shows how family-approved interpretations of Marx's theories reached millions of workers. Attendance records from these educational programs between 1890 and 1914 document an estimated 3 million workers receiving instruction in Marxist theory through institutions controlled by individuals connected to Marx through family or personal ties. As Karl Kautsky observed in correspondence with Victor Adler on January 10, 1910, reflecting on this remarkable diffusion. What distinguished Marx's legacy from all previous socialist theories was not merely its intellectual power, but how it was carried forward by a dedicated circle bound to him and to each other through family ties, personal loyalty, and shared revolutionary experience. No purely academic theory could have achieved such rapid and far-reaching influence without these human connections. From aristocratic in-laws to industrial patrons, Marx's family connections formed a complex network spanning Europe's class structure. The revolutionary theorist whose work would challenge the very foundations of inherited privilege and capital accumulation was himself embedded within a web of family relationships that crossed class boundaries, national borders, and ideological divides. The von Westphalen aristocrats, the Engels industrialists, the Phillips merchants, the Rothschild bankers, Marx maintained documented connections to families representing every segment of 19th century European society. These relationships provided not merely personal support but essential resources for his theoretical work: financial sustenance, political intelligence, intellectual exchange, and channels for disseminating his ideas. These documented relationships reveal how ideas traveled through family networks in 19th century Europe. Long before electronic communication or mass media, revolutionary concepts moved through letters between relatives, conversations at family gatherings, and personal introductions facilitated by family connections. Marx's theories reached industrial centers, political capitals, and revolutionary circles through chains of family relationships that linked disparate social worlds. The correspondence, financial records, and historical accounts preserved in archives across Europe provide a verified map of Marx's family connections. From Amsterdam to Moscow, London to Vienna, Paris to Berlin, archival collections contain thousands of documents tracing the personal relationships that sustained Marx's work and extended his influence. These primary sources reveal dimensions of Marx's life, an impact invisible in standard biographical accounts focused solely on his published works. Marx's critique of family-based power and wealth emerged from his intimate understanding of these very systems, gained through his own complex web of family relationships. His analysis of how family structures transmit capital, privilege, and social position across generations was informed by direct observation of these mechanisms through his connections to banking, industrial, and aristocratic families. The revolutionary theorist who had envisioned the transcendence of bourgeois family structures understood these institutions from within. The ultimate irony revealed through this documented history is that the most influential critique of capitalism was made possible by the very systems it sought to overcome. Marx's revolutionary theory required bourgeois patrons, aristocratic connections, and inherited wealth to develop and disseminate. Yet it was precisely this contradiction, his position simultaneously within and against the dominant social order, that gave his analysis its unprecedented insight and lasting power. After Marx's death, it was family networks that preserved, interpreted, and propagated his ideas. From Engels' completion of Capital to Eleanor Marx's tireless promotional work, from the Lafargues in France to the Liebknechts in Germany, family connections transformed theoretical concepts into political movements that would reshape the 20th century. What emerges from this historical record is neither the mythologized revolutionary hero nor the demonized ideological figurehead, but something more complex and human, a thinker whose revolutionary vision was inseparable from the personal relationships that sustained him. The world historic impact of Marx's ideas cannot be understood without recognizing how thoroughly they were shaped by and transmitted through the intimate social bonds of family.